How do you hide an arms factory inside a U.S. port and feed cartel wars from Florida? Start with marine equipment labels, add forged invoices, and ship 2,500 rifle kits per container, week after week. In the next minutes, we'll unpack the 5:30 a.m. breach that exposed the Garrison Shield Network's audited industrial-scale pipeline and the offshore skiff rendezvous that kept it alive. Watch to see how a single choke point at Port Everglades unraveled $180 million per quarter and delivered a 28% drop in border violence almost overnight. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. At 5:30 a.m., the yard looked like work until the gates met a breaching charge and the plan unfolded. SEALs took the doors. FBI and HSI locked the perimeter. Armored vehicles rolled in tight as rotor wash threw grit across stacks of coils and shrink-wrapped crates. Floodlights snapped on. Radios went to short, clipped bursts. The compound sign read Marine Fittings. The layout said something else. Concrete barriers formed firing lanes. Shipping containers sat staggered to block angles. A tug horn from the channel masked the initial crack of entry tools. Then the team flowed through a reinforced vestibule with steel layered into drywall and a sliding blast curtain hidden behind a rack of hose reels. Inside, the sound died. The first hallway was wrapped in insulation and baffled vents. Jammers hummed under metal grates, knocking drones and cell signals flat. A false front opened onto a tidy counter with barcode scanners, sample propellers, and laminated safety posters. Behind that, the walls broke into a grid of bays with rubber tiles and overhead rails. The maze had rules: one-way paths, doors that latched outward, mirrors to spot anyone tailing. A forklift idled with keys zip-tied to the frame. The paint smelled fresh, but the floor showed months of wear. A dark track running toward two long warehouses keyed to access panels. Teams split. The first sweep found rows of fixtures arranged in sets. Upper receiver blocks, torque arms, serialized jigs with laser-etched lot numbers. Hydraulic presses sat on thick pads beside cages of coiled springs and gas tubes. Pallets wore labels for boat hardware, glossy and correct, but the top layers were decoys. Beneath them, heat-sealed trays held rifle upper receivers, bolt carriers wrapped in oil paper, and small parts nested in foam. Every station had torque specs taped in clear sleeves, and a bin of rejected components tagged with dates and initials. The pattern showed itself fast. Containers staged along the north wall carried 2,500 component kits per load. A whiteboard listed cycle counts and staffing notes that matched a weekly output of about 3,600 rifles. The rhythm set by pallets and barcodes, not duffel bags. Scanners on lanyards still held open sessions, and a laptop ran a labeler with last night's timestamp. A rack marked QA Hold contained gauges and pinned test blocks. Even the trash told the story. Wrapper lots matched invoice numbers, and cut straps lined up with pallet IDs. Numbers hardened the picture. One bay held 2,400 completed rifles stacked in modular crates. Another had 1,800 unfinished kits staged by caliber and rail length. Cash sat in shrink-wrapped bricks sorted by Route A, Route C, and backhaul, with amounts written in grease pencil. Evidence logs flagged invoice packets with matching fonts and vendor stamps, all tied to shell firms that existed on paper and mailbox services. The central office had manifests for 3 convoy windows and route sheets with rest stops and plate readers marked along highways. Concealment ran from ship to shore. Containers wore marine equipment, HS codes, and part descriptions that matched catalog numbers. Small freighters showed AIS gaps in regular 42-minute slices, always in the same offshore box. Skiff transfers synced to night tides that brought shallow draft boats across sandbars without runners touching bottom. Dock cameras along the river recorded only compliant cargo because the skiffs landed beyond their frame. Insurance certificates and safety audits sat in binders for the front office, all current and neatly tabbed. In the command space, Whiteboards mapped lot numbers against convoy windows and drop zones that lined up with corridor towns along the Texas border. Posted flags marked alternates. A calendar tracked port crane outages, custom shift changes, and weather fronts that could hide a late scan. The factory floor was audited and scalable. QA checklists matched shipping manifests. This was industrialized trafficking with throughput and buffers, not ad hoc runs. If the floor made rifles move, the ledger made them multiply. The next stop shows how the money kept the pipeline invisible. If the floor moved metal, the books moved everything else. Operation Iron Ledger spun up as the follow-through, a financial raid that treated the network like a corporation. Teams hit 34 shell companies at the same hour across Florida, the Bahamas, and Belize. Warrants lifted laptops, mirrored servers, and pulled entire email domains into evidence. Subpoenas chased bank cores. Payment processors got preservation orders before the first coffee finished brewing. The brief was simple. Audit it like a business and let the math tell the story. At first glance, the transactions behaved. Wire memos read freight, marine parts, consulting. Invoices matched catalog descriptions. HS codes lined up. But the cadence went sideways after midnight. Wires stacked inside narrow windows between 12:08 and 12:31 a.m. Then again at 3:14 a.m. Always in neat, round dollar chunks that dodged enhanced review thresholds by a few dollars. The pattern repeated across banks and jurisdictions, like a metronome nobody could hear unless they overlaid timestamps. The flow number shocked even the accountants hardened by narcotics cases. A machine moved $180 million per quarter through freight firms, casinos that specialized in high-limit markers, and crypto wallets that spiked and drained in under an hour. In 18 months, 912 wires crossed desks on 3 continents. One flagged account shed $12.7 million in just 28 days, falling in steps that matched weekly container departures and truck convoys logged in the yard's whiteboards. When ports slowed, balances plateaued. When cranes turned again, the money sprinted. The disguise leaned on paperwork discipline. Layered invoices stacked behind purchase orders with matching HS codes, so every shipment looked routine from a compliance desk. Cash drops reconciled to shipping schedules down to the shift, filling gaps where banks would have left a trail. Vendor names felt familiar because they were recycled from legitimate marine suppliers with one letter swapped, or a domain registered 2 months prior. Accounts payable clerks in unrelated firms paid them on autopilot, never seeing the duplication because each invoice sat under a different spending limit. One case pulled the curtain further. A small LLC paid Harbor Logistics, while a sister entity billed Equipment Refurb. Both traced to the same P.O. box and the same freight forwarder, yet each claimed separate management and filings. Their wire histories braided together. One pushed funds before containers left the yard. The other received refunds when weather delayed a sailing. The timing matched port notes seized in the raid, including a line about crane maintenance that extended a window by 6 hours. Port Everglades sat at the center. Production, concealment, and transfer all converged there, and the ledger mirrored it. Financial timestamps echoed container departures, right down to the minutes when vessels cleared the harbor mouth. A casino marker settled as a ship hit the sea buoy. A crypto wallet emptied as a truck left a bonded warehouse. Even toll transponder pings lined up with notifications from payment gateways, tying real movement to digital cash. Then the switch flipped. Seizures landed, accounts froze, and the throughput dropped to 0. Within 2 weeks, cartel-linked violence fell 28% in 6 border hot zones. Several towns posted lower homicide counts than any week that year. It tracked with the missing rifles, but also with panic inside cartel logs that spoke in code about dry taps and cold metal. Investigators called it industrialized because the books balanced. Throughput scaled with staffing rosters and shipping slots. Risk was priced into fees and spread across layers like insurance. The enterprise followed quarter-by-quarter discipline, closing gaps, adjusting routes, and auditing itself with the same rigor as a public company. But networks adapt. The yard sits dark. The accounts stand frozen. Work now shifts to new proxies, new currencies, and blind spots the first pass didn't touch. Now push policy where it breaks the next network. Demand tighter port audits, AIS anomaly tracking that flags pattern gaps, and financial transparency for logistics firms handling dual-use cargo. Industrial crime lives on trust. So what other marine parts are moving tonight?